Hey guys, you ready to let the dogs out?
What?
Do what? Let the dogs out. You know, like, who let the dogs out?
Who let the dogs out?
Dude, I almost had you. You never had.
Who let the dogs out?
The pleasant noise you are about to hear coming from your radio is not a mistake.
Did somebody slip up and write stupid on my forehead?
Explain why you were doing 61 in a 25 zone.
I was drag racing. I'm a drag racer.
You were drag racing in a Prius.
I don't win a lot.
I want you to back out of that track and hit the pace car. Hit the pace car? Hit the pace car! What for? Because you hit every other damn thing out there. I want you to be tough.
Boy, that escalated quickly. I mean, that really got out of hand fast.
You jumped up a notch.
It did, didn't it?
Oh, righty.
Alrighty then, welcome to Racing Nation. Got a special broadcast for you this morning. Matt Weaver is going to join myself. Sean Sullivan is again yet in Ocala, Florida, sitting there warm. I had this thing on my car this morning they call ice, Matt Weaver. I know you're used to dealing with that, but Florida boy, born and bred, I do not enjoy waking up and having to scrape ice from my windshield.
Well, you say I'm used to it, but don't forget I'm originally from the deep south, Mobile, Alabama, and I don't respond well to cold like this. I came to a town called Hotlanta expecting to get away from the frostbite, and that hasn't been the case this weekend, especially given the 2 weeks that we spent in Daytona that were largely very, very comfortable. So, today is supposed to be a little bit nicer once we get closer to green flag time, so I'm looking forward to the race. I'm looking forward to this new project of ours that we're rolling off. We're kicking off this morning here at Atlanta Motor Speedway.
You know what? And I'm excited that to take this next step. We're going to do some pre-race broadcasts with Weaver from the road throughout the season and really try to bring the fans a perspective before the race, a nice, short, sweet, to the point, what's going on and what to expect from the NASCAR race of that day.
Yeah, pre-race, post-race, during the middle of the week when things happen, driver interviews. Listen, this is a project that I've been trying to put together for several months now. Back when I was with PopularSpeed.com, I was trying to put the pieces together to do a lot more audio content. That's something that a lot of our readers had told me that they wanted, that we tried to kick the tires on last year, doing some podcasts, doing some live radio. And once I left there, I was trying to figure out, what made the most sense. And what a lot of people don't know is that I actually got some of my first radio experience with you on the Racing Nation weekly show. And this is kind of full circle, and that's kind of exciting to me.
Yeah, and we're excited to have you back. I mean, you had to take a little bit of hiatus from us, but we're excited to bring you back into the family and have you on board with us. Jumping right into things, we'll bring Sean Sullivan into the mix here. He is, like I said, in Ocala, Florida, living the dream on the radio with his dog right there beside him. How you doing this morning, Sean?
I'm doing actually wonderful, and so is my favorite, best girl in the whole wide world, Nellie, the yellow Labrador. Her real name, believe it or not, is Bunelli. I named her after the shotgun. So, but affectionately so, we call her Nellie.
Sometimes the information you get from Sean Sullivan is second to none, and you cannot compare it to anything else. So let's jump into things. Weaver, I know you've thought about this a little bit, and I'm going to call you Weaver so we don't have any confusion in names here, and that's exactly what I posted it up when we went live here was, Sean Matt with Weaver. So, hey, we're just going to have to drop your first name. I'm sorry.
That's the way it works every week here in the Media Center. I have actually largely forgotten my middle name, Matt Matthew, so it's par for the course.
All right, so let's go into it. What can we expect today from Atlanta Motor Speedway, the Folds of Honor Quick Trip 500?
Well, the first thing I would say is that you kind of totally have to throw the results of the past 2 weeks at Daytona out the window. I mean, if you're a hardcore fan, obviously, this comes to no surprise, as restrictor plate racing is kind of an entity unto itself. So in many ways, this is the first week of the actual season. With all due respect to the Daytona 500, this is where you really find out what you've got for the rest of the year, or at least for the first half of the year. It's the first downforce race of the year, the first race under this new reduced downforce package, which may not be that much reduced. We'll talk about that here in a minute. but it's the first chance for teams to really find out what they have as they try to prepare to either get into the chase or show what they've got during the chase itself.
Now we had some turn of events here at Atlanta Motor Speedway and the qualifying effort. Now the Busch brothers were on the front row, and now one Busch is starting in the front and the other one's starting in the back. Kyle Busch had his qualifying effort disqualified. He's not. They just showed him as not qualifying at all for the third round because he failed post qualifying inspection. What can we take from that as far as, is he going to be able to work through this field? We watched him pretty much kick butt last night in the Xfinity race, but that's the Xfinity race.
Yeah, the Xfinity race has no bearing whatsoever on the Cup race, obviously. You kind of see this every year when you get to Atlanta. It's the first race, so teams might not totally have a grasp on things that they may or may not be able to get away with throughout the rest of the year. I mean, last year we had the debacle where a lot of teams were struggling to get through pre-qualifying tech inspection. This year, Kyle Busch failed tech inspection. There's going to be no further penalty. These races are long. I don't really expect Kyle Busch to stay back in the field for long. The only thing he's got to worry about is that early on in these races, these cars, we expect them to be very loose, very free. A lot of teams are going to be looking for grip early on, and they're not going to have it on a relatively green track. So he's got to worry about getting in trouble early. But I think we'll see Kyle Busch, fighting for the win tonight. He's one of my, 5 favorites, if I'm being honest.
Now, you alluded to something when you first started talking, and that was the downforce package, or lack thereof, the lower downforce package. What did you mean by that?
Well, NASCAR last year started to experiment with different rules packages to make the races better. We all remember, sadly, the races at Indianapolis and Michigan, which utilized a high drag package that really didn't go over well. The racing was pretty awful, if we're being honest. But then there were the 2 races at Kentucky and Darlington, which used a reduced downforce package, which received rave reviews. 2 very awesome races, and NASCAR ultimately decided during the offseason to go that direction. And so basically what you're looking at for the rest of the year this year, all non-restrictor plate races, is that NASCAR took away about a quarter of the downforce from last year's levels. We're talking about 25%. They've changed the balance of these cars a little bit. They've shortened the rear spoiler. They've shortened the overhang on the front splitter leading edge. And they've changed the radiator pan a little bit. So all told, it's a quarter of the horsepower taken away. And the hope is that NASCAR will have races at Atlanta, at Las Vegas here in a couple of weeks, Fontana, that look very much like what we saw at Kentucky and what we saw at Darlington earlier this year.
Huh. Sounds interesting. I mean, so the lower downforce package now is not the lower downforce because they've found the speed that they had before.
Well, yeah, let's go into that. That's the big caveat. Like most things in NASCAR, good things always seem to have a caveat. And I was kind of kicking the tires on this topic during the NASCAR media tour, talking to some crew chief friends of mine, and basically the consensus in the garage is that now that we've had an entire off season to kind of prepare for this, simulators, 7-post rigs, all the works that teams have at their disposal, teams like the Hendricks and the Gibbs and the Team Penske's, they've gotten anywhere from half to 20% of that roughly 25% back. And while they've restored most of the downforce, they haven't quite found the balance yet because, it's not as simple as just saying you're taking downforce away and you're putting it back and the car is right back where it was, because you still changed the balance when you started tinkering with the splitter and the spoiler and the radiator pan. So it's going to take a while to get these cars back to where they were last year. But I don't think we're going to see quite as drastic of a exciting race as we saw at Darlington and as we saw at Kentucky, just because these teams have found so much more downforce. And unfortunately, it's only going to get worse as the year goes on, as we go to places like Phoenix and Las Vegas and Fontana, and teams start to have more practice sessions, more data to dissect, more track time. They're only going to find more. And so a story that I wrote on AutoWeek.com earlier this week is I basically implored NASCAR to, even if you get a good race today, don't rest on your laurels. Don't take it for granted, because these guys are working every day. That's what Trent Owens said to me earlier this week. Trent Owens said, we don't take days off, and we're going to keep finding more and more downforce the more track time we get. And Carl Edwards even said we need to keep taking it off. And I'm totally of that same mindset that, you shorten that spoiler some more. You remove the entire splitter as far as I'm concerned. I don't think we're going to get to that point yet, but NASCAR needs to keep making those changes that we started last year, to where maybe if we get to Charlotte for the All-Star race, run a test package. See if you can take more downforce off in a race that technically doesn't matter as an experiment. When you get to Kentucky and when you get to Darlington like you did last year, use those races to keep making this package better. And maybe by the time we get to the chase, throw them one more curveball. I know the teams hate that. They want as much test time before the chase. But to me, I always feel like the best racing happens when teams don't get a lot of time to look at data. And if you look at that first race with the lower downforce package at Kentucky last year, we had an entire test day dedicated to it on the Wednesday before the race. And it got rained out. It rained all day. And there was only one practice session on Thursday, and that race was awesome.
Wow. Yeah, and you're right. So as far as the Quick Trip Folds of Honor 500 today at Atlanta Motor Speedway, what can the fans expect to see?
One of the things that really stands out to me is the success that Denny Hamlin has had here. I think that he could be the first guy since Matt Kenseth in 2008 when he won the Daytona 500 and then won Fontana back-to-back. I think he's got a great chance to go back-to-back, Denny, that is. I opened the show by talking about how I don't think the results of Daytona matters at all, and they don't. But I do think that Denny could open the year with back-to-back wins just because he's been so good here. And I do think the guys who have traditionally been good here will be good here again. We're talking about the Busch brothers, Denny Hamlin, Jimmy Johnson is always superb here. And those are the things that I think will still carry over, even though we have a slightly different rules package this year.
The guys that really like the 1.5 miles or the shorter tracks on the circuit, those are the guys that perform well here. You just went through those guys' names. I mean, we look at Denny Hamlin and we think Martinsville and Bristol, and it's one in the bag for him.
Yeah, he's more than just a short track guy. I mean, obviously, as a former late model stock car driver from the Virginias, he's very good at places like Martinsville and Bristol and Phoenix. But he's one of the best pure talents in the NASCAR Sprint Cup Series, and so he's won at Atlanta before, and I think that he's going to be near the front as we get closer to the end of the race.
Sean, do you have something over there?
Yeah, I do. I hate to cut off Matt, and I'm certainly not cutting off Matt, but I have to give you guys – I'm going to do my own race update right now, and let me tell you, if you the fans out there want to see something absolutely hilarious, you need to go onto YouTube and Google, or how you search, Clint Bowyer's Crash Supercross. I just watched the Supercross from last night, and let me tell you, it was hilarious.
And those of you that don't know what Sean's talking about, a couple guys got together, Clint Bowyer, Ty Dillon,
Stenhouse,
Ricky Stenhouse Jr., and Greg Biffle all got together, and they went to the motocross at the Atlanta Dome here, and it just north of their track, and they did a hole shot race coming out of the gate. Well, Clint Bowyer won that hole shot, but he didn't shut down in time, and he face planted into the wall coming into turn one at the motocross. Very, very comical, funny. My question, though, is we've seen an instance with the off-road vehicle happen with Tony Stewart. I wonder if that was going through his mind as he was flying towards that wall.
Oh, it totally was. I think the entire NASCAR community looked at that and breathed a giant sigh of relief, because we've had a lot of stories here in recent years, namely with Tony Stewart having these, off the NASCAR track incidents, and here's Clint Boyer doing a face plant into protected walls. Now, make no mistake, it wasn't a concrete barrier that he flew into, but it was good fun, and what he said after the whole shot challenge was awesome. Candid as always, Clint Boyer. It's Supercross, so you go for it.
Oh yeah, no, most definitely. Oh, wait, I don't know what just
Weaver?
happened there. Oh, go ahead.
That's the whole thing. These guys are competitive. They're not going to shut it down, man, as you saw with Clint Boyer. I mean, I thought for sure if I was going to bet on this, of course we're not going to bet on something so ridiculous as this, but the funny part is Ricky Stenhouse Jr. went out and had his bike prepared by KTM Red Bull KTM, just so he could win this. So, I mean, it was competitive, just like today, the Folds of Honor. It's going to be competitive.
A lot of people have been very critical of NASCAR drivers who participate in extracurricular activities. And, of course, you'll never hear me fuss about that. I recognize that this is the primary job. But you guys know me. I'm a big short track guy. I'm a big late model guy. And guys like Chase Elliott and Kyle Busch, Tony Stewart with his dirt stuff. These are guys who like to race elsewhere and give back to the grassroots or give back to other forms of racing. And, racing is inherently dangerous. I think that it comes with certain responsibilities or certain fears, but that really shouldn't shut these guys down. I recognize that they're brand names, they're household names, but good for Clint. Good for Clint and those other three guys for having some fun. It exposed the NASCAR personalities to a slightly different culture. It was a good cross promotion for Supercross as well, and crisis averted.
Yeah, no, I agree with you 100%. Here's something, what you just said, something they're doing extracurricular. Well, let's define extracurricular, and I know I'm going a little extreme here, but Matt Nix just did a pace car ride at Atlanta Motor Speedway.
My first.
With that, yeah, his first. But think about it for a second. I mean, Casey Mears got out there. He didn't rock and roll the thing, but he rocked it, had a little bit of fun. Now, if a tire went down in that, there you go, an extracurricular activity where somebody could get hurt. Sure. Again, I said I'm not going to the extreme with it, but I have to make the point.
Yeah, things happen in racing. Things happen on racetracks. Things happen in race cars. So I think we probably spend, in my opinion, too much time trying to limit these guys and their activities. Because look at Denny Hamlin. Denny Hamlin hurt himself playing a pickup game of basketball last year. You're not going to wrap these guys in bubble wrap. You're not going to have them in some sort of protective coating. So,
yeah, it's a good way to put it.
I hope that there's less talk about this in the coming years, especially with this new playoff format, which does provide the flexibility for drivers to miss races and still compete for the championship, a la Kyle Busch last year, missing 11 events en route to the championship.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Hey, Matt, I'm really looking forward to, Weaver, I'm really looking forward to the Folds 500 today. I can't wait. I personally, like you gave a brief recap of the Xfinity race. I think Kyle Busch is going to be on the money today, one of the guys to watch in the top 5 for sure.
Yeah, it's really hard to prognosticate this race just because we have so little information. I think that it's a brand new package. We know who's traditionally good at Atlanta, but this is the first race where the labor of everyone's off season is going to come to fruition. I mean, if you look at qualifying, there's several guys who have some surprising times based on where they were last year. I mean, Jamie McMurray with crew chief Matt McCall were much improved last year in their first year working together. Really turned it up as the end of the season got nearer and nearer. But they qualified second after the dismissed time of Kyle Busch. Trevor Bayne, we all know how challenged the Roush cars were throughout the entirety of last year. And the pressure is on for those guys to get better now that Stuart Haas is coming to the Blue Oval in 2017. So, Stenhouse in 5th, another example of that. And so there's some interesting times. Brian Scott with a 10th place qualifying effort for the RPM team. It's going to be interesting because no one really knows what to expect for this deal.
Let's look at Roush Fenway for just a second. And kind of dissect this a little bit. Is it Roush Fenway just got the aha moment and found some speed, or is it the experience of the drivers that they have on those teams now actually coming to fruition in working with the package that they've been given?
Well, it's funny you say that because their most experienced driver was the worst qualifier of the bunch in 14th at Greg Biffle. You had the two kids, Stenhouse and Bain, there in the top 5.
I know when Bain walked into the media center after qualifying, the first thing that he said was, "It's been a long time since I've been in here on a performance-related issue."
Yeah, absolutely. And so I think the sport needs Roush to stand up this year. I think this, like I said, is a very pivotal year for them. They face being relegated to 3rd tier or worse next year when Stuart Haas comes in. They've been outperformed by Richard Petty Motorsports. You could argue they're 3rd tier now. And so I think if they have a really good year, qualify all 3 guys into the chase, it's good for the sport. Everyone loves Trevor, one of the nicest guys in the garage. Ricky Stenhouse, one heck of a driver, a cool dude. And Greg Biffle is one of the most technically bright people in the garage, and someone that, from a personal standpoint, I want to see have some success, just because I want to make sure that he stays in the garage for a lot more years to come, because I think his analysis and perspective is really good. So, plus the Ford fans have this affinity for Roush Fenway Racing, and they haven't had a lot to cheer for over the past couple of years. So, this is an important weekend for that team as they try to put the right foot forward. And if they can take the fight to Gibbs and Penske and Hendrick and Stuart Haas, I think that will be a huge story when we get back on the air later tonight to talk about this race.
All right, speaking about later tonight, about 1 o'clock, the broadcast starts on Fox. You'll be able to watch the Folds of Honor Quick Trip 500 right there. But what are we looking for when we watch that race? We know that tire wear is an issue. We know that strategy is an issue, and this is 500 miles, so strategy does come into a big play here at Atlanta Motor Speedway with this particular race. So strategy is going to be a big thing. Tire wear is going to be a big thing, and working your way to the front. What can the fans expect to see, and who do they need to watch for that dark horse?
Let me tell you guys something. Atlanta is probably the most perfect mile and a half that's ever been designed for NASCAR. I think that...
Really? Hold on now. Go ahead.
Would you like to debate this? Because we got Kansas, we got Charlotte, we got Chicagoland. Name one that's better.
Well, I'm not saying that it's a bad track, but when you talk to drivers, they say this is the most talented, or you have to have the most talent to be able to drive this track. It's a very difficult track to get your grasp around, get the feel of.
And that's why it's awesome.
Okay.
I mean, that's why it's so well beloved. Kyle Busch said a couple of years ago, when the first rumors started to appear that they were considering paving Atlanta.
A repave, yeah.
Yeah. He said that he would lay down on the track to prevent them from paving this track because the surface is absolutely perfect. You brought up tire wear. It's kind of like a big short track in that regard, that you can save early in a run and find yourself with some more speed later on. Or you can go for it early, get yourself some track position, get out in clean air, and kind of manage the tire that way. There's just so many things. The multiple grooves, you can pass on the top, you can pass on the bottom. It takes a while for the top to come in, but once it comes in, it is good. But, I think back to a race in 2011, a great battle between Jeff Gordon and Jimmy Johnson where they exchanged the lead several times. And you see that a lot, not to that extent, but you think of all the close finishes. And the reason why you've got all these side-by-side finishes at Atlanta is that you can run the top side, you can run the bottom, and you can get two guys just going at it late in the race. And you think of all those variables, and to me it just makes Atlanta, the most fun that I have going to a mile and a half. And I swear to God, if they ever talk about repaving it, I am joining Trub right there in turn one, and it's like, I guess you're going to bulldoze me too because this ain't happening.
Well, the question was asked yesterday after the Xfinity race was, is the track ready for a repave to Kyle Busch? And his instantly, without, no delay, his favorite response, no. That was his answer, no.
I think that's probably all that needs to be said on the matter.
Okay. Dark horse to watch for today.
Oh, dark horse. I mean, it goes back to what I said before. I really don't know who we should consider a dark horse at this point because we don't know what the structure is for this year. We don't know what the tiers are. You know, in hindsight, you could have the Roush cars be strong all year, and really they're not dark horses. But I think given where they were last year, you know, if a Roush Fenway car can come away with the win at Atlanta, if I had said that 5 years ago, people would say I'm crazy. Of course, Roush is a contender at Atlanta. But I'm really curious to see what these three cars, Trevor Bayne and Ricky Stenhouse and Greg Biffle, have because they look sporty. And I think they've kind of been relegated to the underdog status over the past couple of years. So, yeah, let's keep an eye out on those guys, and let's kind of break this down later tonight.
Sean Sullivan, I know you have some input there. You always have that dark horse that you're looking for in a race, and it's usually your pick is an underdog. Who are you going after today for the dark horse win?
Well, as much as I'd like to say he's an underdog, he's certainly not. So I cannot say Martin Truex Jr. You know, I think it's time that we're going to see a Hendrick car that we don't see very often get into winner's row, and I'm going to go ahead and say Kasey Kahne.
Well, I mean, he hasn't won consistently over the past few years, but we have seen Kasey Kahne in victory lane and right here as well.
2014, most recently.
Yeah, most recently 2014 here. So, I understand where you're coming from as a dark horse pick with Kasey Kahne. I mean, he hasn't had the wins, he hasn't had the fame that the rest of that Hendricks Racing teams have had here in the past, especially the past several years. But he's always one that, especially on these shorter tracks, mile and a half, he's always somebody to look after.
Yeah, and you know, somebody else that I really did a lot of research on this past week, and I was very surprised to see him qualify in the top 10, is Brian Scott. So as my dark horse, I'm going to go with Brian Scott.
Well, it's funny that it never fails with Sean Sullivan. He always finds a way to steal something from me there. And that was another one that I was going to go after. I'm really watching Brian Scott this year. I mean, this is his rookie year, so to watch him in the Cup Series and watch him progress through the ranks has been great, and he's a great guy too. I mean, he's easy to talk to, another guy where you could walk right up to in the garage, and he's always courteous and able to talk to you. So he's my dark horse pick as well.
Imagine that you copied me again.
No, you copied me.
Yeah, it's always something with Matt and I, not Weaver and I, Matt and I. So I probably think by the end of this season, we're going to have an official challenge. We should make a board and keep tabs on whose dark horse does the best.
Well, if we're going to do that, I think there should be some stakes on the line. And I think that between Nix and I, we should actually have a dark horse challenge, and the winner at the end of the year gets the rights to the name Matt.
Oh,
wow! That's a pretty cool challenge. Actually,
the gauntlet has been tossed.
I know I think he just tried me.
That's a pretty.
Who was his dark horse pick again?
I don't even know. You see, this is why we got to keep tabs on it.
I know.
Well, to be fair, I said all three Roush cars.
I was about to say
stacking the deck.
I know he stacked the deck. So if you had to pick one out of that, all three Roush cars, because I mean, come on, I picked one. Sean picked one.
For the record, because we're going to start keeping points now on the dark horse challenge, let's go with Ricky.
He's going to go with Ricky Stenhouse Jr.
That's a good pick. I mean, honestly. So let's. You know what? I'll go ahead and step up to the plate, and I will take charge and keep track of the dark horse picks. We have to do it every week, though.
Well,
guys.
I kind of was hoping that a third party was going to keep points because I will cheat. I'm not even going to lie. I'll cheat. I'll add points.
So that's where your daughter gets it from, huh? I can't even play a game with Nix's little 5-year-old without some kind of cheating involved. So
hey, look, I was told when I first went into service by a drill sergeant, he said, "How come you didn't run that 2-mile run fast enough or faster?" And I said, "I don't know. I went all the way out to the mile and came back." He said, "Did you cheat?" I said, "No, drill sergeant." He said, "If you're not cheating, you're not trying."
Yep, I love it.
All right, so we're going to talk a little bit real fast in closing minutes here. Something near and dear to Weaver's heart, and that's the Camping World Truck Series. The race yesterday ended pretty spectacular. I mean, all three leaders take each other out in the closing laps of the race. What the heck happened?
Well, Christopher Bell had the field covered. You know, this is a guy that's used to having to earn passing points on dirt tracks and in midget and sprint car racing. And so I think that he just kept setting himself up to have to keep passing guys because he had the tire issue in the first half of the race, had to get himself off cycle before the caution clock was waved, worked his way back up towards the front, had a bad pit stop, came out fifth after taking the lead. He just had such a fast truck that on one of the last restarts, I think he probably underestimated his closing speed on his teammate Daniel Suarez in second. And I believe it was coming out of turn 2, or is it going into turn 1?
Coming out of turn 2, yeah.
Yeah, he just got into the back of Suarez, who then got into leader Matt Crafton, and it turned all three around in front of the field. And it's really remarkable to me that more guys didn't get caught up in that deal because you had 3 trucks all spinning in front of the entire field. And at the end of the night, we got a surprise winner in John Hunter Nemechek in a unsponsored truck, winning the race and punching his way, presumably, into the chase for the championship for the Truck Series this year. And I said it at the time. We live in an era where it's so hard for blue-collar, privateer-type teams to have success in the modern-day NASCAR. And so, make no mistake, they were fast. They got some lucky breaks with the 88, the 51, and the 4 all having the problems they had. But they were fast. And I was talking to one of their crew members, Austin Polak, on pit road, and he said, look, we qualified outside the top 15, but we're faster than this. I'm dropping my phone everywhere. Wow. But he said, we're faster than this, and we're going to be a contender. And I took Austin's word for it, and he proved to be correct there. And for them to be able to have any kind of success, top 5 success, is a testament to the passion, the hard work, and the dedication of that entire family team to kind of make this truck their labor of love. John Hunter came out of the late model ranks, has had a lot of success winning the Snowball Derby, winning the All-American 400. So it just warms my heart to see an unsponsored truck with a blue-collar family without a ton of funding come in and win a race. Now, for the love of God, someone sponsor that truck before the chase because they deserve it.
Oh, most definitely. And we look back at Christopher Bell, and I mean, this is the second race of the season, and we'll put his statistics at he's about 6.4 flips per race and 100% crash out.
He's a rookie. We often overestimate. It's not that we overestimate his talent because he's that good.
He's really talented.
But we think that it's automatically going to translate to stock cars, and he's fast. But I think there's a certain point where when you have really good equipment, you kind of have to rein yourself in a little bit, and I think that's what we're going to see out of Christopher Bell here in these first couple of races. He's going to be contending every single week, especially on these mile and a half, which I think really reflect his short track, open wheel background. And he's going to have to learn how to drive these heavier vehicles around because it's still a little bit different than the late model stuff that he had a lot of success in too. I think the competition here is a lot more greater. But in my opinion, make no mistake, he is going to be one of the bright stars of NASCAR's future. Sprint Cup talent.
Sean Sullivan, in the closing moments here, what did you take away from the truck race last night in Xfinity?
You know what? I absolutely loved the truck race, not because there was a lot of action towards the end, but the fact that a lot of people that you didn't expect, i.e. what Weaver just said, John Hunter Nemechek winning the race, having, that was near and dear to my heart on a personal level because back in the day when my father-in-law, before he passed, used to race the late models, Joe Nemechek used to always just say, hey, get on the track when I'm off the track. And that meant a lot. We couldn't afford to lease the track out like Nemechek could. So anytime a Nemechek wins, I'm happy. But I also was really happy to see Cameron Haley come in second. And, of course, Daniel Hemrick to do as well as he did. So, yeah, good stuff. Also the Xfinity race, what can I say? Kyle Busch won it, of course. Great race. But I always go back to the point, I don't love seeing the Cup guys win in the lesser divisions.
What would you have there, Weaver?
Well, I was going to say that to me it's just really, really awesome that a guy like Parker Kligerman can be the points leader after 2 races driving for Ricky Benton Motorsports. That's
who?
his blue collar.
Ricky who?
Ricky Benton, blue collar as it gets, and for that team to be able to call themselves the championship leaders 2 weeks in, I think speaks volume. And don't forget, you got Ryan Truex, who had a podium of sorts at Daytona, still in the top 10 of the standings. Grant Enfinger, another blue-collar guy, defending ARCA Series champion, doesn't even know if he's going to be full-time this year yet, has been very fast, qualified on the pole at Daytona, qualified fourth here yesterday. It's good to see so many blue-collar guys getting opportunities. Daniel Hemrick with Brad Keselowski Racing, second in the standings. So I love the roster this year, and I can't wait for the rest of the year on the truck side.
Matt Weaver, always very passionate about the truck series. He follows that. You can check out his interviews with these guys. We're going to be doing some audio interviews. He's going to be tagging some written articles along with those. Check those out. He'll be pushing them out throughout the year, and we're going to have some fun. Sean, we're going to go ahead and cut this off. We're about 2.5 minutes, I believe, before we need to get back into the media center. It is 10 o'clock here at Atlanta Motor Speedway. And, the race is coming on. I mean, the race is going to be on here very shortly, and we're going to find out whose house this is. Hey, for Sean Sullivan, I'm Matt Nix, for Matt Weaver. Hey, we'll see you guys very soon.
Okay, hey, did you notice I'm using my mic?